matter. More lives matter. Shot in the back, running or choked out to death on the face to face up on his side. I'm just a coroner. To the yellow journalist that won awards for writing facts. For World Wide Web press stories, always calling them black. Civil rights violated him from Q1-7. And CIA and FBI agents, brethren, fellas with what his brother once heard. Most more urged and study more than if I'm on the road for white curves. Professor Mooses are fighting for survival. Making Moor's models won't happen, calling us captain rivals. Inquisitionist governors and secretaries of state got stateless on their tables like ribeye steak. With no care, blood dripping, they eat black thread. Foreigners wearing 6-point badges, pretending they're heirs to the vastness of state medieval actor. Stainless blood from master horses on service agua. Demons thirst when stealing pioneers and organs. Psychiatry, death industry, the stars selling black horses. And half-closed coffins, cause legs are missing. Killing stateless people, cancer won't even see remission. More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter. More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter. More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter. More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter.
System, what system? Not gonna make myself no victim. Run down analysis, strip them. Must strip reality in order to really grip them in this third dimensional illusion. Organized chaos, confusion, stealing your attention, mental inclusion, universal law, declaration of the ancient. I self-law and master from the rooftop to the basement, blue deep to the spaceship. Ever since all creation, celestial ocean floor to the rain. To the mountain tip, to the cosmic infinite. Basically, we are way above the shit. In other words, get in tune with spirit. Take a breath and accept mental polarity, gender, rhythm, correspondence, vibration, cause and effect.
You are now in the Hoops queue.
More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter. More lives matter. Like lives don't matter. More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter. More lives matter. Black lives don't matter.
More lives matter. Cause I'm thinking no sound off. You get detected with protected looking at law. Get my perspective on the rescue. Replay. All the rules that one replay. So they want to cancel. Believe a copy that can't believe a charge for Trayvon. Michael Brown's after us to find call. The afterlife visited the class. Wrong. Who they really want to see with the crown on high and the cards on free. I am free and your nothing is but your land or your country to secret and liberal rights. The insatiable delight of knowing thyself and bringing all injustice to light. But the fight is your plight, make your sight for the bright. I'm the mic in the night. More time for you to realize that, huh?
More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter. More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter. More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter. More lives matter. Like black lives don't matter.
Like the colonists, you know what you are. Start dominating. The problem is, you start thinking like the colonists, you know what you are. Start dominating. The problem is, you start thinking like the colonists, you know what you are.
More of the truth and take it to the corners, across highways, past hedges and through borders. Move on dirt Mars like broken down water, doctor cures. They never pay dues and don't pay food for news. No Wally guys from Bill more blues. Prophet saved him as money before the floor fell through, and that's true. Even though I don't have proof, memory tells me don't fall for truth. Got mental loop, hanging from their own vine from the fig tree. Looking up at them like Big B. No white flag or mercy for you fag. 5-point and pentagram getting offers like high school ballers. I'm deaf, dumb, and crippled. They can't tear this up, not one drop. Fall on their foot. Started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started propagating. Started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started propagating. Started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started propagating. Started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started propagating. You know I play with them so simple and easy. From 19, how long the see it's sleazy. So sick, it's measly and disgusting. Everyone stood there. The Moors did nothing when Jew was attacked. They took the covenant that they will protect them and have his back. Behind on dues by 4 months. Go when they can't go new courts. Perform simple versus simple. In a fight, not doing their job, 3,500 for good right. Gucci force not supposed to be in Gucci stores, a god of thank Allah, and Buddhist rap sagas. Confusion clearer, and battle falls Moorish nationality declarer. Straighten out the crooked ways, rap conduct squarer. Started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started propagating. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started propagating. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists know you are. Started propagating. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Let me strip them down, I'm the bone bearer. Negro, black, colored, minority, death preparer. Not the being, but the label attached. See me like Martin, going crazy, waving gas. Cause you call yourself black, that's a kicking sign on your lip, all that. I'm pulling down no t-shirts like Soft Fracture. Insert Ripper, call me Jack. And get slapped though, Admiral when I flow major like macro. Don't spit on a cameraman like Black Will, but beat the case like Black Bill, but no lawyer. Ask Jim Carrey, liar, do nothing for you while they get rich and for you. Make you follow magistrate orders that get the coke, the smoke from wood corners and block ghetto. All I see is rappers, dress codes, repedo, tight shirts, skinny jeans looking like heavy metal bands. I'm not but L like bread in hands. I grab mic, no sweat in hands. With words like brands, I don't worry about getting scanned. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started dropping it. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started dropping it. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started dropping it. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists know what you are. Started dropping it. What up?
Right, peace and love, Moors, Islam Moors worldwide. I am Mizraim, I left L. You are now tuned into Moors Heritage and History School, eyes wide open. Blog Talk Radio, Sons of Allah, for February 18th, 2021. Simultaneously being broadcast on Canaanland Moors YouTube page. I am here with the brethren, Cujo. Hold up, pardon. Unmuted. Definitely in here with Cujo IOL. Peace, Moor.
Peace, Moor. Islam. What's good with you?
All is well, man.
That's proper. Everything clear on my side? I'm clear for you?
Yeah. Am I good? You can hear me?
Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay, yeah, you sound well. Everything sounds great, bro.
That's what's up.
You know, everything sounds great. Oh man. But you know, all is well with us because, you know, as it say in the circle 7, when you place your in the hand of Allah, then all is well. You know, it doesn't matter how much material gain you walking with. The universal energies that's transcendent, knowing that, you know, the shadow and death and all, because it is what it is. We what we thought it was, etc., past or whatever, but all is well in that sense. But, you know, on another level, it's like, even through all of this that we living through now, some people just still don't get it, bro. Like, I feel like some people are going to be on whatever side they've been on or on now. You know what I mean? And I would hate to have to say, hey, pick sides. But unfortunately, with the diversity of life and the diversity of mentalities, that's kind of like where it's at. You know what I mean? And bro, a lot of people is not going to make it through the transition based off of the mentalities they have, you know? All right, so I don't really want to attack nobody personally, but I feel like when it comes to Moors and people's perception or the narrative that we could see has been heavily pushed out there, you know, they gotta make a narrative. These people are wild and crazy and the whole nine. All of it being false. You know, we know what's really good. Some people may get it, some people may never get it, bro. You know, and I just feel like that. Speaking from the video you sent earlier and whatnot, you know, and other things, you know. But it just reminded me, like, yo, some people is forever going to be with whatever their preconceived notions are. So I know we're going to talk about some law tonight, among other things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like this, when I hear people talking bad about Moors, because it's one thing to say, well, this Moor caught this case, and then that case ended up like this, and, you know, whatever. But when you say Moors, plural, or Moorish Americans, plural, now you're talking about a collective. And it's true that we don't all think the same, you know, but one thing is common amongst us, and that's the lessons of Noble Drew Ali. I think most people claiming to be Moors today, right, had heard, studied, because we know it's not just about being told, but at least if we're going to respect your message, you would have read something about Prophet Noble Drew Ali.
Right.
Like, that's just a fact. That's the common fact. So whether people say, well, those Moors, they're not in the temple, they're not in the Moor Science Temple of America, so these are some other type of Moors, right? And you speak to Moors like who really don't congregate. And, you know, we in a new day and time now with the social distance, everything like that. But one thing I find common amongst us, some people say it, some people live it, but we've all heard of those 5 principles: love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, right? Like whether a Moor is in or out the temple, whether they just saying it by lips only or actually living that, I never heard them say that. I never hear ops to Moors Americans say that. Sometimes that these are 2 pillars out of at least have heard about or heard that, right? And I'm like, well, Is it conditional? Like, do you look at your freedom conditional? Like, if freedom means the absence of restraint and control from any external influence, right? When do you acquiesce that to say that you're not about freedom no more, right? And not you personally, right? But how is this happening? Whereas if it's an argument and it's a shame in the sense, honestly, like on the real, for real, it's a shame we about to go into the age of not even about to go into the age of, like, there is, as we're speaking right now, like automatic, like cars that navigate without a driver, selfless auto drive, like literally no driver in the back, and these things are moving, and we still have to go over this lesson about the right to travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not because it's not necessary. It's just a shame who still don't get it. As far as that this is a basic right, right? Or it's a personal liberty or natural liberty, according to the Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary. So when Moors are standing on this information, and one thing personally, like, it doesn't bother me. It's just like, I look at it as a shame, you know, is that with references to these dictionaries, and people say, well, that dictionary doesn't have the force of law, or, oh, that's a law from the 1800s. But yeah, we're in 2021 Gregorian calendar. The Constitution was ratified in 1791, and it still has validity to this very day. I'm not saying it doesn't get violated. I'm just saying that old laws still apply. So don't act like when it comes to Moors, because they mentioned the case law from 1800s, that somehow they are whacked out. When the law of the land is clearly a double standard that I see for them, but think they are informed. Having a lawful possession 2 of the 5, which when any more touches the case, that on nobody, because at this point, we mean to sound disrespectful, but at this point in life, the court system is, real talk. Yeah. At this point in life, court system is a joke. And I say that because, look at it, bro. People can't actually, at this point in time, have a real day in court, right? And I don't wish nobody would have to have one. Please stay out of there if you can. You know what I'm talking about? If you can, stay out of there. You know what I mean? But the fact is, if you wanted to, right now, according to, I don't know about the rest of the world, but because of this pandemic, because of the coronavirus, all of these things, we have seen the whole corporation collapse. You can't even get a day in court right now in some places. You know what I mean? Like, you can't walk into the court and hand serve your papers. That's what we're living in right now. And some people are still holding on to it when it is on its knees. And I feel like, I may be wrong, the only way it's going to stay afloat is through blind faith in colonial laws and colonial processes that have always been there to suppress the freedom of people. Because people, like when I was listening to these different naysayers and so-called attorneys and so-called lawyers and all of that, it's a shame that they even on YouTube trying to make a case in the court of public opinion. So I'm not ever going to argue with no attorney, as a matter of fact, because I don't like talking to them. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is no disrespect. You know what I mean? None at all. And I don't intend that. But, you know, on YouTube, that's not due process of law. So even when we see like them having Zoom meetings and trying to hold court sessions like they was doing before the pandemic hit. If anybody ever made a special appearance in the so-called courtroom in North America, you see, like if you go there early morning and you schedule the morning time, or you go in as witness with somebody to the proceedings or lack thereof or whatever, you see they bring out the video court for the brothers and sisters and the men and women that's locked up in the county jails. It's like that's what it is for everybody. So we watching them collapse, right? So what I'm saying is this though, for those in that system, right? You like the attorneys, the police. Let's not act like the people who just raided the Capitol and all that. Let's never forget that they was cops, attorneys, judges, firemen, military, ex-military, Air Force, firefighters, representatives, right? So when we saying this, what you got to look at when it comes to what Moor's position is when it comes to so-called courts of law, so-called or dealing with law, period, is that, yes, in fact, any melanated person in the six is going up against a double standard. Mm-hmm. And we know that, right? Because us are competent to know that just off the fact that they use through their quote-unquote, that's not real. So when you get up against a double standard, it's duplistic. That is a fact, you know, just the definition of person alone. We know if you look it up in law, it's natural, artificial. So everything is duplistic, right? So that goes with these standards. You know what I mean? There is, in fact, a double standard. But what we're not going to do is act like today, and I'm not saying anybody should be rebellious, but what I'm saying is we can't look at something that was rotten from the root, right? And today, well, it looks real pretty and has grown branches and stuff that is not impartial. You know, like this. Remember, and I'm gonna quote Vic Gregory on this. Mm-hmm. If nothing else I took from that brother, I'll tell you, he said this, and this is real. He said, let's stop confusing right and legal, right? What's legal and right? They're not the same because, quote unquote, slavery was legal, but it was never right. Like, it's an inhumane thing, but it's legal. So when Moors are dealing with these people who are descended from that, or who have been allowed to participate in the lineal aspect of that system, right? You got to understand, like, it has aspects of corruption that has always been there. Like, they didn't get together and write the Constitution because everything was hunky-dory. Like, every preventive measure in there is because all of that stuff was already happening, right? So they're like, okay, y'all just running down, searching people without warrants. You're doing all of this. We got to stop that. No person, you know, shall be arrested. And then particularly describing the places and persons to be searched, right? That's the Fourth Amendment. So when you look at that, you're like, well, they didn't just say that because they were such psychics, right? Not saying they didn't have jurisprudence. It was because all of that was already happening. So we're not in nothing new, really. Like, you know, it's not nothing new. So I'm just saying, when people try to look down on Moors, because Moors are taking a stance based off of freedom, justice, or whatever, and then they're still violating the Constitution on Moors. It's not because everybody's wrong, and there's many Moors who have been very, very successful with their situations, you know, and all was well for real, you know. But when we're taking these bite-sized samples and saying, well, because this happened to this Moor, which all was really ab initio, the whole process, really, when it comes to jurisdiction, the whole nine, you know, we can't make fun of that. Like, Moors are wrong. Like, no, you're looking at institutional bias. That's a real fact. It's institutionalized bias. Some people call it racism. We know better than that. But that's what's going on. Like, nobody's exempt from that. Nobody's exempt from somebody else's feelings about another. You understand? Like, I can't control how a German is going to feel about me, or how a Mexican is going to feel about somebody from Venezuela. It's something that's exterior to us, but, you know, people feel like that. So, you know, when these practices are being carried out, because especially in North America, that's not funny. You know what I mean? Like, it's not funny. It's not, oh, well, you could defeat racism better if you did it this way. Like, it's a real thing that exists. So you got attorneys, you got police, you got concerned people who just don't know nothing. And not nothing, but, you know, they don't know enough about the subject, and they feel like Moors are things from when this thing was never, you know, normalized. It was never acceptable, really. Let's not forget, you know what I mean? It was only not even 60 years ago. They didn't even want you drinking out of the same fountains. So let's not act like we all subject to their rules and laws when they just didn't even want you in their classroom. And now we get to a point where, especially our sisters and some brothers feel the same way. They get a degree from the college or whatever, and they feel like they've arrived, quote unquote, not my words, but quote unquote, they feel like they arrived in the so-called white man's world, right? They made it. You can't tell them they make it. They got a certificate. They can read it. They feel like they are part of it now. You know what I mean? But the reality is they're not. They're really not. They're always subjects. Always subjects. I don't care what type of job you got. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, with them. Whether you're an attorney, you're still a subject, right? Whether you are a lawyer, a policeman, or whoever, you're still a subject. That's a fact, right? Especially if you subscribe to that jurisdiction. They tell you in plain English in the 14th Amendment, which is really not constitutional, but when you subscribe, it appears, right? So my thing is, we can't act, oh, Moors are wilding, because they're just not conforming. They shouldn't have no opinion about law, history, nationality, because this system is so perfect. There's no flaws about it. Oh, yeah, Moors ancestors invented the car, right? This is how they think. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So you basically have, and people could do their own research, you have Moors who have, say, mentally connected to their nationality. It has faith in these European systems. And mentally, you could say they're Puritans. Hypocrites they are, but just like the Puritans of New England and England and the whole nine, they take a puritanical approach to life, which in everybody else, right? That's puritanical. Another reason why the colonists was trying to break away from England. So when we're looking at English law or whatever, people got to keep in mind that in English, celebrate, quote unquote, we always dealing from what happened in England in the historical context. Volume 1. From what I've read, I disputed like black, like Negroid, like color, but I get his point, right? So J.A. Rogers, Sex and Race, Volume 1, page 197, and I'm going to read this excerpt. It says, Massey devotes most of Volume 1 of his work, A Book of the Beginnings, to Egyptian origins in the British Isles. He thinks that Stonehenge, the most famous ancient monument in England, was built by a quote-unquote Negro architect named Moor. That is Moor, M-O-R, or Moor, M-O-O-R, from the ancient Egyptian. And then he goes on to say, he says now as a Negro is still known as Moorian in English, may not this indicate that Moorian belonged to the quote-unquote black race, the Cushite builders, right? Now those words are not my own. Everything I just said, and I'm unquoting, came from page 197 of J.A. Rogers' Sex and Race, Volume 1. Mm-hmm. So Moors was everywhere, right? Matter of fact, the national dance of England is called the Moorish dance, or the Moorish dance. It's Moorish in origin. You can read up on that in Nature Knows No Color Line. So Moors have a world global history, right? So we can't just say, oh, Moorish Americans' belief system, like that's ridiculous. Most Moors I know anyway are dealing with facts. You know what I mean? Because I'm up on pardon the message. Yeah, but facts. I know that's what we dealing with. You know what I mean? And that still goes right along with the principles we say we stand on, right? Love, truth, emphasize freedom and justice earlier. We could break it down, but love, truth, peace, then freedom, then justice, right? So what's the truth? The truth is they got everything they know from Moors, right? And they can use it in an inverted way, but that does not make them superior to us. And it doesn't make you superior because you got a degree through their system that they just less than 100 years ago didn't even want you with, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, real shit, and still don't fit really. And even if you want it right now, everything is digital. So, you know, like we gotta come out of the delusion. And unfortunately, I know not all of our sisters, but some of our brothers and sisters have had that delusion. They're going to the school, getting a degree, all of this. And this is why I say you got to give Noble Drew Ali mad props, because he gave us a mentality to not ever feel inferior to anybody based off of their piece of paper or degrees in life. Why? Because he was telling you about these type of people, right? Oh, they went to law school, Yale school, the whole thing, right? Got the degree, and I'm not knocking it, but he told you. He said, he mentioned in, what was that? Excuse me, was that Savior of Humanity? When he was talking about the fool.
Jumping through the hoop.
And the longer he's fool.
Yeah, jumping through the hoop.
Jumping through the hoop.
Yeah.
Right? So even though he got the degree, he's a fool right on. That's what he said. He's a fool right on. Right? He could be he or she or whatever. But, so we was taught, if we really paid attention, that, your worth and your value isn't based off of what piece of paper or degree you say you got from school. Like, that's not in the law of the land. It's for everybody. It should be as common as the ABCs people know. Right? Because if it's the law of the land, you got to be aware of that. Like, you got to know that, and then you got to know the text and what goes against that in its very nature. Because you got to keep in mind that, yeah, they legislate things, but there's a lot of things they legislate that's unconstitutional. And it's been dealt with many, many times. So, looking at that, we got to keep in mind that this so-called judicial system is definitely not perfect. It has biases. It has unconstitutional aspects. It is not above errors. That's why people can appeal. That's why there's a such thing as void judgments. So I just want to cite this real quick, and this is from SupremeCourt.gov. It says, on the note of void judgments, so we could stop acting like everything these judges say to somebody exercising their basic right, like they're right because they said it. That's not true. Judges are not perfect. Judges don't always get it right. You know what I mean? And I'm not making no case of defense for them. I'm just saying the fact is that's what it is. And this has been dealt with many times before. So on the note of void judgments, you got to look at it like this. No judge is beyond making a void judgment. It says, all right, so this is the quote from SupremeCourt.gov. It says, a party affected by void judicial action need not appeal. State X Rail Laddie 907 SW2D at 486. It is entitled to no respect whatsoever because it does not affect, impair, create legal rights. Ex parte Spalding 687 SW2D at 705. TJ concurring. Now, that's on the note of void judgments. So these judges ain't always right because they tell you, look, I'll never forget, and I shared this with y'all before, and I have no problem sharing it again when it comes to this and this type of mentality of, oh, everything the judge says is right. Like I told you, I was 17, a so-called judge looked at me, and I was just arguing the 7th Amendment. Okay, say you want to fine me over $20, I got a right to a jury trial, and I'm standing on that. We're not talking subject matter, none of that. You say that this fine is this much, that is over $20. At that time, I'm like, I got a right to a jury trial, and that's what I'm standing on. You know what I mean? But of course, they unconstitutional. Jury trials don't exist in municipal courts and whatnot. So, magistrate told me straight up, he said, just because they have slavery, bro, I was the judicial system the same way. Never looked at it the same way. because that wasn't even the conversation. I'm looking, I got a copy of your oath to the Constitution. This is what it say. You're asking for more than $20. I want my jury trial. Here's your contract to it. And when he said that, that just threw me for. I'm like, why are we talking about slavery? This is just basic shit, right? So there's institutionalized bias. Nah, you know, even when we do claim to this system, a so-called system, it is right, and Moors are just so wrong in this world. Listen, real talk. If you do the his texture, scripture, whatever, we supposed to not know nothing. Yes, and they can complete what they do. But from Duga-wise, that's my perspective on it.
Misrepresentation of just comes from the lack of people. It was let me see, hold on, that was probably like 90s, 95. So yeah, I was probably around 20 something. And there was this dude we knew who he was into moving, you know, weight and whatever like that. So one day this dude European pulls up in like I think it was like a Jaguar truck or something like that. You know, high-end car, you know, came up, you know, hey, how you doing? You know, giving the, you know, see the black guys, you know, high five type stuff or whatever. And dude came to buy some Coke or whatever. When he left, man's telling us that, yo, that's Judge whoever's son from the court right around there. And he comes all the time. He comes regular to this. Matter of fact, when they have the lawyers, whatever party, they invite me to come with the stuff. They'll pay me good to come there and just have it there for them to do their lines and whatever. Now, if that's the son of a judge and brothers and sisters are going down for dimes of weed or whatever, 10 years because they found a dime in their glove box or whatever like that. They found a nickel bag on them. And judge's son could be going to coke parties, should let you know where this thing's at. And that was 90s, where we were like, forget them. Forget that system. Because there's no way that, just like you're talking about with the principles, there's no way that they're about justice, right? And like you were saying, Institute of American Law on justice. Justice has been variously defined. It is the constant and perpetual disposition to render to every man his due, or perhaps more correctly, it is a conformity of our actions and wills to the law. So they're obligated to make sure justice is served. They can't act from a position of they're not going to serve justice or they're going to be biased or whatever. As soon as they do that, they're letting you know that their will is not to the law. Their will is contrary to law. Their will is not in favor or in harmony with law. And to have individuals that are Moors supporting them and riding with them, and you know, something happens and they're quick to say, oh well, the Moor whatever, and they never say anything about these criminal institutions that they have out here that's robbing people of their life, robbing people of the little bit of finance that they have, robbing people of their morality, robbing people of their ability to think properly. And there's no words to them. But let one more go to court. Let one more go to one of these tribunals and something crazy happen. Now everybody's debunking the Moors and how we're not right with law and the Moors don't know the law. But these criminals, they let them get away with whatever. Right? 6, justice is interior or exterior, the first in the conformity of our will and the last of our actions to the law. The union of both makes perfect justice. The last is alone the subject of human jurisprudence. Interior justice is the object of morality. So for them to even talk about justice, they themselves have to be moral. They can't be immoral and speak justice. If they're immoral, they're really exercising injustice. And as soon as they're exercising injustice, they're letting you know where they stand with regard to you and your rights, or you and your life. Because if they're not going to be moral, you don't even go in there trying to be moral with them. You better go in there with their obligations and hold them to them. Because the idea of Asiatics, dark-skinned people, Moors, taking a position with the injustice, immoral people and putting their life on that, putting their career on that, putting whatever on that they're going to defend that criminal position is more reason why Moors who know need to be saying something and putting out something and letting it be known that there's another perspective. It's not really just how it's presented. It's not really how they put it out to you, because they're really putting it out to you in order to swindle you. They're putting it out to you in order to not be on the side of jurisprudence, not looking at it as positive law, totally abandoning the positive law for the negative, and have their little whoever's speaking on this negative law as it being legitimate. In the most extensive sense of the word, justice differs but little from virtue, for it includes within itself the whole circle of virtues. In the most extensive sense of the word, justice differs but little from virtue. So going back again to, if they're making claims that they're for justice and they're with justice and the law and whatever else, then they have to be seen as virtuous. If their actions aren't virtuous, then you can't connect them to justice. It's a contradiction. Yet the common distinction between them is this: that which positively and in itself is called virtue, when considered relatively with respect to others, has the name of justice. But justice, being in itself a part of virtue, is confined to things simply good or evil, and consists in a man taking such a proportion of them as he ought. To make a law, there must be a superior who has authority to make it, and an inferior who is bound by it. To complete the definition of law, we must say that it is a rule prescribed by a lawful superior. So if we're in our own land as Aboriginal and Indigenous people, there's no way that you're inferior or you're bound by some colonial operation calling themselves court. There's no way that you're bound. And you have a duty as natural person to stand up for the fact that you're that. Regardless of what the odds are. The odds could be against you. We hope the odds are against you, because when the odds are against you, universe steps in and helps you a little bit when the odds are against you. Right? We really hope that the odds are against you when you take that step, so that you can have the ancestral forces having your back, not just the fact that you know law. Because again, Juali said this is divine and national, right? And I've had situations of going to a tribunal, and before you leave the house, you put certain people's name on certain color candles and stuff like that. You know, you write their name on certain papers, put them in your shoes and stuff, and then people don't show up for court. People miss the date. Stuff gets changed around. Something happens. Because as far as we are concerned, being that we're the Aboriginals and Indigenous of this land, we recognize who is occupying, and we already know their track record and how they do, and they already know our track record and how we do. So it's almost who's gonna move first, who's gonna take the position first. Most of the time, they're gonna try to take it because they have to prove to all the others that they are the law and they are whatever. But you have one more go in there and not stand up when Judge whoever comes in, and see how fast these Asiatics are either going to be looking at them as, oh, who's this guy not standing up, or oh, this Moor's gonna get arrested today. Wait till the court starts and the judge sees him sitting down, and they start playing all that Negro stuff. Right? They start playing that Negro side with the colonist position. Right? But then, you know, they talk all this BS about Moors, but they're gonna tell them take your hat off, and they're gonna take it off. No questions asked. Rasta's gonna go in there with his little timer, take that off. You're not real with that. The real Rastas wear turbans. So we have to recognize as a people that we've been played, because there's people who are violating because they're assuming certain authority, which, you know, they can't assume because our people are giving them that authority to assume, because our people don't know who they are, which again is the point with Noble Drew Ali, and how come he's not mentioned and nobody ever brings him up, but they're going to bring up all these other leaders, especially the leaders that sold you out, and they're going to push that as where it's at, and push this as is some religious thing, and the Moors are only in Spain in 7-Eleven and have nothing to do with this side. But they're going to recognize that Morocco is the first people to recognize United States. And they're going to recognize that Europeans are colonists in America. Europe, this is not their homeland. And then Drew Ali telling them that the Europeans 5,000 miles away from home, and you're home. And they don't want this thing together. So they're going to suffer. And their suffrage is really only on them when these so-called highwaymen, aka police, law enforcement, or whatever, starts violating law. Not that they weren't violent before, they're just making it obvious now that they're about violating. And the only reason that they can violate is one, because of all these foreigners here who are backing them by naturalizing and being part of their system. And two, the traders on our side who want to play slave ship games and who want to play, their everything except Moor's game. There's nothing else that's going to stop all this abuse and whatever else that our people are going through. And again, it was you that got the 25th of December, right, Miz? I think you're muted.
Oh, my bad, I was muted.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a fact. It's definitely a fact.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I see them play those types of games. You know what I mean? Like give court dates. There's so-called court dates anyway. We're not even open. You know what I mean? Like, so can't nobody tell me nothing about how they play dirt. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen it. You know, or run from what's real. Like, either way you look at it. But when you got these so-called courtrooms set in Christmas Day and days that they're not even there, something is going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I never heard of them, doing that. So something had to be right and exact in my favor, I would say, for them to be setting dates that they couldn't even hear it if they wanted to. So, and that again, in the sense of if you take them serious, that's a violation of due process of law. You know what I mean? So, like, we know they violate due process of law. That's not even a question for some of us. Some of us are trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Some of us been there 17 years ago, already know what time it is.
Straight.
But believe in that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I already know. I don't, so that's why when I see people saying their system, quote unquote, as a standard of civilized society, in reality, I'm shaking my head because it's like you're talking about some of the dirtiest, lowest criminal people on the planet. And you're trying to hold other people. That's crazy to me. So, like, this dude, this is a unconstitutional procedures and practices, as they say, serious. They're practicing. And criminal people on the planet, there is no justice in it. So, to be held to kind of say, I'm not going to sit out here. Like, that's not for protection, right? And then you got people who, because they'll be reckless with it. It's different. It's different. You can't lump everybody in the same category. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
And do that, especially when it comes from attorneys, judges, people like that. It's against their own quote unquote canon laws, let alone the Constitution, right? Their canon laws, you can't be biased because of somebody's race, religion, nationality, right? Like people say, oh, your nationality doesn't mean nothing in law. Where I'm from, it's in the state code of judicial ethics that they can't bias you based off of your nationality, national origin, religion, sex. They threw in recently sexual orientation, the whole shit. Like, these are things that they cannot have biases on in law. So when you got people who say they are part of law law enforcement, attorneys, and all of that, judges, and they have this preconceived bias against anybody who's claiming to be Moors or Moorish Americans. That is unlawful. It's unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional. It's against their own canon laws, you know, and it's against everything they say they represent. But they give this public image that it's okay to disdain a national group of people because of their nationality. That is some sick shit, and it's going on, you know. And anybody, whatever area, territory you're from, don't be afraid, because remember, in the Constitution, the Ninth Amendment is there for a reason. When it talks about those rights not enumerated, right? So that means that there's even more rights that you have that are beyond the Constitution. So nothing shall be made to despair, to deny, or disparage those rights. So when you come through the door and you're Moorish American and they already have a preconceived bias on you, that in itself is unlawful. I don't know why people think so-called systemic racism is based and circumscribed to one so-called race. Like, oh, you can't experience racism if you're not claiming to be black. Well, Moors know, you know, Moors know from both angles, like, yeah, my nationality helped me tremendously in the legal, lawful way. And then others know that, well, it did cause some adversity. Still, that adversity was not warranted, i.e. not constitutional, because they didn't have the right to take that stance based off of my nationality. Not because I said so, but because that is the law that they say they abide by. And if they don't, that is fraud, that's hypocrisy, and they're not qualified. And remember, you know, due process of law, I mentioned void judgments for a reason. Giving out these void judgments, you know, that really have no legal effect on your rights. They're just mad. Why? Because Moors standing, of course it's a narrative they got to spin and make it sound like it's crazy, because those 5 principles alone collapses the foundation of falsehood and self-righteousness and so-called superiority. So Moors is coming in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. You ain't got no room. If somebody's really standing on those principles, you have no room for superiority. You have no room to be superior. So, you know, people call it white supremacy, you know what I mean? Systemic supremacy, systemic racism, the whole shit. It ain't like every race is exempt from that, you know, mistreatments and abuse, as Noble Drew Ali called it, you know. So I'm just saying, like, we're gonna stop acting like, I never acted like, but some people need to stop it with all this self-righteous shit, because they're an attorney, because the courts, municipal, superior, state court, whatever, like, these people are just God and don't make void judgments. They just, like, you know what I mean? Like, people need to stop with the silliness, the foolishness. They have been crooks and criminals in them seats for years, decades, matter of fact, centuries. So let's not act like all of a sudden, because people said, fuck this, excuse my expression, we're standing on love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, because that's the salvation, that's the key, right? And then now all of a sudden, because these people are standing on those principles, a system that was founded in corruption against those principles. You know, opposite of love is hate. Opposite of truth is lies. Opposite of peace is war. Opposite of freedom is slavery. Opposite of justice is injustice. You can't tell me they haven't been operating on the inverted 5 principles, because all last summer we seen all these so-called Black Lives Matter protests and all of that. So the whole world know this system ain't right. Stop it. Only stupid I don't want to call nobody stupid. Let me bring that back. Only those who are not so able to grasp the reality of the world we live in and how this judicial system is, think that it's okay to hold us to that standard. It ain't an okay standard sometimes. It's either all the way 100 or it's not. And it's not all the way 100.
Yeah.
So we're not going to act like it is. And because the court said this, they won't even give niggas a guilty verdict. And we done seen them kill multiple people on camera from 2010, 2000, all the way up to 2019. We didn't see it like that. Well, matter of fact, I'm stunting because even through a pandemic, you seen it happen to George Floyd. They was telling the people, social distance, social distance, social distance. But they didn't feel the need to social distance enough to not put a knee in another man's neck. I don't care what his past was. I don't care what criminal charges he had before. That was wrong. You know what I'm saying? So if you trying to set the example to the world to social distance, but you put a knee in a man's neck on the concrete, obviously social distance ain't mean that much to you. It didn't mean that much to them. But
then on the other side, yeah, on the other side, they want you. Yeah.
When
No, go ahead, Moor.
Nah, I'm saying, but these same people, those same people want to give people tickets and citations and all of this for lawfully congregating, as it says that people have the right to do via the First Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the law of the land sometimes and not others. It's either the law of the land or it's not. And if it's not, say that. Say that. But you better be able to show and prove, because we know the Article 6 supremacy clause, all of the judges in every state and every other state is bound to that Constitution. All right? That's a fact. So if it's some other laws, then it is what it is. But we're not going to be held to a standard that is not justice, even though they feel like, quote unquote, niggas should be in line with their corruption. No, the law of the land is the law of the land. And people could be mad, whatever, in your feelings, whatever. It is what it is, you know. So the double standard is real, right? We just seen Trump acquitted. We seen all of that shit amongst them. And our people are still holding on to that house of cards. That's a shame on them. And they're bashing Moors who are standing on these lawful principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice by, because that alone, with the power being in the people, puts them out of a job. They need to get paid off of the people, right? They need people to not know so they can make money. When I visit the African in, you know, what they call in Washington, D.C., the National Museum of African American History and Culture, biggest day on the wall, they had it from the Declaration of Independence. And they spoke about how all men were created equal and free, right? And when any form of government, with certain unalienable rights, and when any form of government becomes destroyed or abolished, said government, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it meant something. It's a lesson, right? Because in the Declaration of Independence, it didn't say some men are created equal and free. It didn't say Frenchmen. It didn't say Englishmen. It didn't say Moroccan men. It didn't say black men. It didn't say white men. It said all men are created equal and free and endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, which among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? So even your right of travel, your right. I'm not telling And as we make our law, how did these Europeans, in your own eyes, become superior to you?
Yeah.
That's a mental illness. Why? Why? How are they superior to you? Like, why? If everybody in the world thinks that they are, why do you think that they are? And I hope it's not because everybody else says so. You know what I mean? Like, we got to come out of that mental slavery.
Yeah.
Said all men, not some. So if we on the same standing in the same ground, everybody's equal, I don't want to hear nothing about no colonial laws. I'm not trying to be rogue, renegade, none of that. But the reality in the history is what it is. I didn't make it up. Anybody can fact check that.
Yeah. Actually, let's fact check
that.
Let's fact check it with the Institutes of American Law 200. In entering into society, man yields up a part of his natural independence in exchange for the advantages he receives from society. And in consideration of those advantages, he becomes bound to obey the laws which the majority have established. This species of constraint is far preferable to the ferocious liberty of a state of nature, for if he is restrained, others are prevented from doing him any injury. Civil liberty is the power to do whatever is permitted by the constitution of the state or the laws of the land. It is no other than natural liberty, so far restrained by human laws, and no further operating equally upon all the citizens as is necessary and expedient for the general advantage of the public. Thus, every law which prevents us from injuring our fellow citizens increases and assures civil liberty, though it may decrease natural freedom. On the contrary, every law which controls our actions unnecessarily in relation to things purely indifferent is a law against liberty, unless upon the whole it proves a benefit to society at large. So when you look at the driving issue, they're going to say, oh, licenses are for society so that people can prove qualified to be behind the wheel because they did the test and then they got the sticker and they got the plate and they got all this stuff, which is really against liberty because they just took your right and sold it to you under the guise of plates and licenses and everything else. And then you look at the taxes that people pay, and then the stuff that they're saying tax is supposed to pay for, it never pays for that. But then people still keep paying the taxes. That's controlling your actions unnecessarily. Because if they could get you to give up the civil liberty without them having to even threaten you, everything's perfect. All they need to do is get you to give it up. Get you to take that power and just hand it to them. Because the civil liberty or the power of the civil liberty is permitted by the constitution of the state or the laws of the land. And statutes, codes, ordinances, acts, etc. are not the constitution of the state or the laws of the land. And as soon as they take you down that road, you're giving up all your natural liberties. Not some or a portion, you're giving up all. Because you're volunteering for the slavery at that point. Because you should want to keep your natural liberties. What you need them for? Especially when you realize, on the contrary, every law which controls our actions unnecessarily in relation to things purely indifferent is a law against liberty. You know how many laws against liberty there are that people actually are in favor of? And the people are only in favor of it because of their ignorance. It's not like they got forced to do that. Like when we talk about the lawyer people, they're not forced. They agreed to be a hoop jumper. They agreed to that. They said, you know what? Instead of me providing a service to the community or whatever like that, I'm going to be a hoop jumper for these people to make sure that people's civil liberties are violated. Right? Thus every laws prudently established, so far from destroying our absolute rights, become their strongest support. The absolute rights may be divided into three principal points: personal security, personal liberty, and right to enjoy property. So a car is property. Home is property. Bike, shoes, you have a right to enjoy those. So if somebody's selling you a shoe with no sole, and that's how shoes are now, that you just have to accept it, and you accept it, you're the dumbass, because the property's botched. Somebody sell you a car without an engine, there's no right to enjoy that property. They're violating you, because you can't even enjoy the property that you're getting, which you have a right to enjoy, because dude sold you a lemon. Right? Personal security, personal liberty. That means it's your own if it's personal. The right of personal security is the principal object of the law. It consists in the legal and uninterrupted enjoyment by man of his life, his limbs, his body, his health, and his reputation. Vaccines violate your personal security. Masks violate your personal security. Swabs in your ass to check for some lung stuff is violating your personal security. And if you don't say anything about it, they're going to keep violating. They're going to keep violating. And again, this is the point of why there's MHHS, Moore's Order of the Round Table, RV Bay Publications, so that our people could get this information. Moor Science Temple of America, so our people could get this information, get reconnected to their rights as natural people, and then start exercising based on these rights that you know you have now, that you didn't think you had before. And we get it. It's a process, but you're not going to get some microwave rights tomorrow. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And know that these people have every hook, snare, bait, whatever in place to make sure that you don't make it. And they've been had those things in place 200-300 years. So there's booby traps all over the place. You know, make sure you're competent. Make sure you at least have some level of understanding what your rights are. Because like they say, if you don't understand your rights, you don't have any. If you don't know your rights are obsolete. Go, I yield the floor, Moor.
That's a major fact. Hey, bro, I don't have my Institutes of American Law right now, but I don't know if you could pull up the Book of Equity. I think it's like number 3,275 or something like that. Because a lot of people don't understand the difference between law and equity, and how in the Constitution that any case in any of those realms, whether it be law or equity, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction, right? In all cases in law and equity, it lays out the jurisdiction of venue. But I wanted to add this in the meanwhile, if you could pull that up.
I'm about to look for it right now.
What you're saying. Yeah, in the Book of Equity, Institutes of American Law. But I'm in the 4th edition Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary right now on page 1066, 1066. And the definition of personal liberty reads, it says the right or power of locomotion, of changing situation, or moving one's person to whatever place one's own inclination may direct without imprisonment or restraint unless by due process of law or due course of law, as it says here. And then there they give case laws and references. You know, Pinkerton versus Burberg, 78, Michigan, 57344, and W57N, 5797LRA, 50718 AM STREP 473. So that's just for the record, you know what I mean? Like, personal liberty is the right of power of locomotion or of changing situation or moving one's person to whatsoever place one's own inclination may direct. That's the right to travel. I'm not about to bicker with anybody about traveling versus driving. The only reason why is because I already know. Mm-hmm. And trying to convince somebody else of that, I don't ever want to have to do that. But, you know, I'll reserve, you know, when it's time to argue law, you know, or if that was the case, then that's what it is. But in the court of public opinion, I'm not concerned with that. You know what I mean? Because that is what it is. People can say anything, but that's not how law works. You know what I mean? So they can say what they want. They clearly have forgotten the foundation of what these colonists in America was built on. Yes, there was elements of corruption in it, but there was also elements of isonomy, which was for free national beings, right? So you can't tell, you know, because you got to remember, nationality not just is the order of the day, but especially back then, because everybody knew what it was when it came to nationality and what that means in international law and things like that. So being as though most of us don't share the same nationality, and these Europeans will tell you, I'm not your brother. You know what I mean? We're not, that's how they feel, some of them. And it is what it is. And I'm just saying at this point in time, we just gotta know what's what, man. Like, who's who, what's what. You know, we can't be acting like this system is such an exemplary example or lesson for everybody to live their life by a standard of corruption. Like, we're not doing that. Everybody knows something is wrong with this. Mm-hmm. And anybody in these days that's acting like it's not are clearly ops, they're clearly agents, and they're clearly, especially if they're hating on somebody's nationality, they are clearly for, whether directly, indirectly, knowingly, or unknowingly, they are for what people call white supremacy, but it's European colonialism in America that they really stand for, and they work for it. Yeah. And they will convince you that it's the only way, when it's not. It's not. And we need to kill that myth. And I don't want to hear that shit. You know what I'm talking about? Like, that is ridiculous. And those who are doing that, shame on you. Shame on you.
Sure.
And that's a fact. Yeah, the on YouTube and try to make people's nationality be inferior to anybody else's because of their ideologies based in freedom. that's what we're not gonna do. That's what we're not gonna watch happen. That's not right and exact. And shame on you if you say you're a part of the quote unquote court systems and attorneys and all of that, and you think that's okay. Shame on you. Please get it together. Not just for yourself, but for everybody else. For everybody else. Because it gets to a point where it's not even about us individuals on the individual level. Like, it's not even about individuals, it's about a nation. When you say Moorish American beliefs, Moorish American ideologies, Moors are sovereign citizens, that's a whole nother class of citizenship that's not real. And y'all should know, especially if you claim it. See, like, this is the thing, bro. Like, we know when we claim Moors, we understand that Negro, black, colored, these are brand names that never identified us. They were legal statuses. Not because we said so, because the law records, the historic records, they all say so. We didn't make it up. You can do this study for yourself and find that to be true, right? So, but if you think that you that and you powerful and you still okay with these double standards based off of people's nationality or race being discriminated upon, you're ashamed. Even if you think you're black and you think that that's okay, you're ashamed. And it's no other way around it. It's just no other way around it, because everybody knows that when you're talking about the so-called United States and the states within and all of that, you know that it has a foundation based off of race or nationality or a subject and ruler. You know what I mean? Like, we know that that's the foundation. Ain't nobody gonna get on here and say that it's not, because you know that that's not true. That's proven fact. And it wasn't just so-called Africans who experienced it. There was Irish people who were slaves on the plantations. You had presidents who was born on the plantation. And they were slaves too. So we're not gonna act like all of that is okay in these days and times. I'm just tired of that, bro. And that's really all I gotta say about that.
Yeah, I hear you.
Fact on facts.
What do you remember from the book 5? I just pulled it up right now.
It says something about equity. Equity in the eyes of the law is everything, and law is nothing without equity. It says something to that effect. I believe, if my memory serves me correct, it was like 3,270 something. And I hate to send you on a search like that, not being sure.
Oh, it's all good.
But if you can't find it, it's no problem.
Yeah, all right.
But it mentions something about. You see it?
No, I see. I think I pulled up the wrong book. I pulled up the equity book, but that was like 3,700 or something. So I think it's in the remedies. I think it's in the remedies book.
Nah. That was right. That's why I said it was number 3,700 something.
Oh, 37. Okay.
25?
Yeah. 37. Yeah. Okay, hold on. Let me just put that out there then. That's probably where it is. 37.
I think
20. Yeah, that's 23. Hold on.
it says equity. It goes into equity and justice. And equity is everything in law. And law is nothing without equity.
No. Yeah, this thing's playing games right now. I'm about to pull it up.
Yeah, nah,
27,
it's all good.
25,
We'll get into that another time. It's all good. We don't have to stress it out.
yeah.
But yeah, that's just what it is, man. Like, I don't know. I wish I could pull it up on my thing now. But you was mentioning something about the conveyance and enjoying your property and taxes and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
This is what's crazy to me. Like in the South, in America, with what they call the United States, it's something that they have that's called, it's not a real thing. They call it the Mason-Dixon line, right? The Mason-Dixon line. And to this day, like I could say, I don't know about so-called Maryland, but I know for a lot of places from Virginia and below, like they have you pay tax on your car, bro. Like if you own a car, they have you pay yearly taxes or monthly taxes, however that goes.
Yeah.
Like they don't do that in the North, but they do that in the South. So we already know they still have a mentality of trying to be the owners of. Let me say it like this. They feel like they own people or people are subjects. So when these natural people go to own things, they still feel like they're owed something, right? So they say, well, if you own a sort of a car and you use that in your daily life, you gotta pay me tax. That's slavery, bro. I don't care how they want to dress it up. I don't care what they say about it and how it's a good old system. No, that's slavery. Because somebody owns something, they should have free use to it with no third party influence. Like, again, if you buy yourself a North Face jacket, for example, you use that jacket as many times as you can in life or whatever. You don't have to keep paying North Face to wear it every time after you bought it. So who is that'll say you gotta pay me for something that you own every so many seasons or yearly or quarterly, monthly, whatever? I don't know how they do it, but I know they do that. And I'm sure there's people probably in the South listening now who know that that's a real thing down there. You know what I mean? Like that's how they move. So when it comes to this system, it has flaws and errors and mentalities on so many different levels that show that they still have a level or a mentality of owning property. And if you own property, just like if you was a slave, they got a right to it too. And that's just ridiculous.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Once you buy something, you own it. It's your property. How you still paying somebody else for that? Forever. That's crazy.
Oh yeah, here's the thing too. With regard to the equity. Page 3724. Law is nothing without equity, and equity is everything, even without law. Those who perceive what is just and what is unjust only through the eyes of the law never see it, as well as those who behold it with the eyes of equity. Law may be looked upon in some matter as an assistance for those who have a weak perception of what right and wrong, in the same way that optical glasses are useful in those who are short-sighted or those whose visual organs are deficient. Equity, in its true and genuine meaning, is the soul and spirit of the law. Positive law is construed and rational law is made by it. When in certain cases the law is clear, it would be doing iniquity to depart from it, under the pretext of tempering or modifying its dispositions by particular principles of greater equity. Otherwise, the law established to give to all men an invariable rule for their conduct would have nothing certain, and the citizens would in vain attempt to repose under the shadow of its dispositions. Equity is not an arbitrary opinion of the judge. It is subject to certain and fixed rules, for unless it be directed by science, it becomes uncertain and unknown. And in such case, the magistrate must tremble while sitting in the temple of justice. His mind will wander in pursuit of a phantom of equity, purely imaginary. Damn.
Facts. So some of these cases, especially when it comes to Moors, because equity and justice is hand in hand if you read on. But that was exactly the one I was talking about. So that's what they're scared of. They don't ever look at the situation as being a situation of equity. It's always what they call law, criminal law. It's never based off natural law, natural justice, natural equity, you know. And then they got people so brainwashed. They got them thinking that equity only involves what you can take out as a loan on the house and other things of that nature. And it's a natural principle. Equity is equality, is balance, is justice. So, you know, let's not confuse the two.
Mm-hmm.
So, people dealing with this issue on the right to travel, they make it a statutory issue about so-called laws, but it's really a natural right based off justice or equity.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not even categorizing the cases or the situations under the right jurisdiction, because in all cases, in law and equity, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction. That's Article 3, Article 6. So let's not play games like people ain't getting, you know, violated with due process of law when they even try to hear these cases, period.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, because, again, back to the Declaration of Independence, when it said all men, right? And then it says, not some men, not these type of men, not that type of men, like all men, you know, it also says that no government can rule without the consent of the government. I'm not making that up. That's what the founding documents, who they call, not me, who they call the founding fathers, agreed upon. That's what they put out there. So, you know, when it comes to that, it can't be biased. You know, that's really what it boils down to. You know? So somebody told, thank you for adding that on. You found the right one. You know what I mean? And if you want to go, that's what magistrates are scared of. That's what makes them tremble in the temple of justice. As they say, that's outdated, because Institutes of American Law is from 18 this very day. They still take an oath to uphold it, and that's 100 years before the Institutes of American. Some of them know more about what they was talking about back then than
exactly.
Shit, like, so the major fact. So we're not going to American law. We're not going to discredit that based off of timeline, because ancient principles don't change. Can't be legislated out. Yeah, man. This all of that is part of public opinion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And again, the emphasis is on the clear. None of that is facts. And even if they facts, they are not truth. Because truth and facts are two different things. But the facts we've been presenting tonight are all true. So, bro, like that, they could just miss me with all of that.
All that.
You know what I mean?
Straight,
Really shit.
straight up.
That's a fact. You know? So yeah, so once we know the law of the land and can move with that, because it didn't say governments can't rule without consent of attorneys. It didn't say governments can't rule without consent of the judges. It didn't say governments can't rule without consent of the police. It said consent of the governed, the people, right? No government can rule without consent of the governed. Governed. Who's being governed? Where's the consent? Who consented to colonists overthrowing the culture and customs of the indigenous people of America and instituting and implementing foreign laws that nobody consented to? Like, how did that become law? Based off of what people are calling government.
Mm-hmm.
And the people didn't consent to.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. You know. But with that, Moor, I gotta temporarily yield, bro.
Islam. Anybody in the thing? Anybody in the queue?
Hold up. As of right now, yes, indeed. We do have a couple callers in the queue.
All right.
I'll open up the line now to the callers. If you are listening via internet, or Canaanland Moor's YouTube page, and you want to call in, I'm going to open up the call lines because we do have a few callers. But just so you know, the call-in number is 563-999-3403. That is the guest call-in number. It's 563-999-3403. And if you want to call in, you have to call in now before 11, because on the blog talk, it's going to shut off all incoming callers at 11 o'clock, unless you're in that chat or in that host queue, so that you can be in for the last hour. Right? So with that being said, we're going to take caller 646-806. You live on the air. Peace, man. Islam.
Islam.
How you doing, brother?
Islam, Moor.
All right. Peace, Moor. How about yourself? Fantastic. Even through all the chaos, seeing the peace and the order that's there, and then getting the opportunity of hearing you guys, man, that makes my world perfect. Wow, I tell you what, though, brother man, when you opened up with breaking down those definitions, that was the whole most awesome full circle connection to everything that y'all put down there. And it was very enlightening. When you used freedom, you said, and you gave the definition for freedom. And when you look at it, and you think about the term restrictions to outside influences, I mean, that just says everything on so many levels.
I mean, so understanding that principle is so empowering. I mean, I've never looked at it from that angle of the breakdown until you defined it. We overlook these things. We take words for granted. We miss the fact that it was said the power is in the word. I tell you, that was an awesome opening, and everything you broke down all along the way, just wow, all connected. Wow. I mean, to me, it was almost like reading chapter 1 in the Circle 7 and then going on to read the rest of the book and seeing how the one thing was being broken down even further and connected with that first chapter. That's how that defining of freedom was for me. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. Very important aspect and enlightenment and eye-opening this piece of character for me. The other thing I still want to touch on was the fact that when you mentioned that it doesn't happen in the North, and in a sense it does. I mean, when people have to re-register their car every so often, they throw that same tax crap inside of it along with all the other fees. The weight and all that. That's all part of the registration fee. But, you know, that's just a sidebar. I dig it. That's what I'm saying. It's a real thing. If the people have a right to enjoy their property, right? And who has an authority? So all of it, you're right. But what I'm saying is when, like, in the South, they send you, like, and I'm sure from there could speak on it more than I can, you know what I mean? But the fact that they literally call it taxes for your car, bro, you know that's crazy. If you're from above what they call a Mason-Dixon line. Like, you know, if somebody say, oh, I gotta go re-register my land conveyance at the DMV. Like, we know as Moors and people who study law, like, okay, that's questionable. Well, like, if somebody say, yo, I gotta go pay taxes on my car, you know that sound crazy, Roy, Dunn. You know that sound crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Above the so-called Mason-Dixon line. That sounds crazy, bro. Yes, but again, I appreciate you, brothers. I mean, I appreciate it's like a breath of fresh air. Because in between the times when, you know, I hear from you and when I hear it from Sister standing on law, and we're not hearing from the school, then in between that is all that dirt, poison, and contaminating thought patterns that sort of try to sink us back into quicksand if we don't watch out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I just give thanks. Your brothers are there, dead in your ground, and keeping it going.
And I just wanted to weigh in on that, though. Thank you for the breakdown. And yes, we do need to look into, and me, I'm a stickler in terms of those principles because I know that all science is based on principles. There's nothing without the principles, and the principles are the foundation for how everything will work. And if you're not standing on them, your wagon ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Your train ain't going nowhere. Your car ain't going nowhere. Your plane ain't going nowhere. Your mind ain't going nowhere. You know, so and so here is the breakdown of the definition of that. I think we need more of that. Thank you.
Yeah, nah, we can start it real quick. You know what I mean? It's Islam, Moor. You know what I mean? But that's what it is, bro. Like, it's so basic. You think, like, you know, why they keep overlooking these basic things. Yeah, and that not nobody's, but like, especially those who claim to be dealing with so-called, you know, lawyers, attorneys, judges, all of that. Like, what is so hard about understanding more up for freedom? It's a basic constitutional right, which means, you know, not subject to external control, which would include anybody acting like they God or judging, you know, where they don't really have that jurisdiction because we all equal. So it ain't no, like you read from the Institutes of American Law, the preliminary book, when he was talking about in order to make a law, there has to be a superior who has authority to make it and an inferior who's bound by it. My thing is, I don't feel like we be as inferior to the Europeans. I said this before, you know, and nobody has presented stone cold facts that show that. And you can't just say, oh, well, because they conquered the land and stole the land, which didn't go nowhere, we're inferior. Like, no. Even if you want to say, okay, well, when the Constitution was written, they had so-called slaves. Well, it was so-called free blacks, free Moors. At the time, there was slavery. So everybody is not. It's just crazy, man. It all goes back to that linking factor, which is status, nationality, jurisdiction. Anybody saying anything otherwise, already know it's a falsehood.
Yeah.
I already know. So we don't even entertain that or listen to that because it's not true. Nationality is the order of the day. They had a League of Nations for a reason, and we'll get into some other facts later. But it's a reason why the indigenous people of America had a League of Nations 300 years before the Europeans did. Understand that. You know, understand that. So we here, man. With that being said,
yeah.
I appreciate the brother Royal Darnell for the check-in, you know, and we can definitely get to the next caller.
Islam.
And unless you want to say anything and add it more.
It's good. It's all good. Peace and love.
All right.
Peace and love, Moor.
Peace and love, brother Royal Darnell. Indeed. Okay. Right. So we definitely doing some good tonight. That's the fact. We're gonna move to the next caller. Caller 702-801. You live on the air. Peace, man. You with us?
Islam.
Islam more.
Islam, I just wanted to say a few things. In the beginning, when you guys were talking, you're talking about how they try to discredit what the Moors are talking about based off the fact that, like, we might bring up like an old case law or something like that. And I wanted to bring up the fact that people, especially with their indoctrinated colonial mindset, they don't even have the proper concept of what time is. Like, we have family members, you know, so-called family members, that are like live more than 100 years. They act like 100 years is a long time. They act like, oh my God, that's 100 years ago. Like, what are you talking about? We have family that live 102, 103. That's like one life. There's animals that live longer than that. You know what I mean? Right. And I just think that's funny. That's like real funny to me. Like that they try to play like, oh, that's old. What are you talking about? But then they try to preserve traditions that's older than that. So I wanted to bring that up first. That's funny how they try to discredit the law because of the date on it. You know, that's funny. And also, I want to give praise and honors to Noah Ali and honors to you brothers for doing the work and being consistent with it. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a lot of agents that's putting salt in the game. You know what I mean? They're putting salt in the game. Like, Moors don't know what they're talking about, but it's funny because I came up with this question. I mean, I don't know if any Moors came up with this question before. They probably have, but I kind of like been trying to coin this question. I call it the unanswerable. And it's a simple question, and it's for anyone who's still pushing, you know, that we're black or black. And the question is, if your skin is brown, what makes you black? And no one has been able to answer this question. You know, I hear some funny things like, oh, my DNA makes me black. And I'm like, DNA is not black. And DNA, like, explain it, you know? They can't tell you the science behind it. And they say, oh, well, that's a term that applies to anybody with nappy hair and brown skin. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So if you straighten your hair, then you're not black no more? And they can't answer because at the end of the day, your skin is brown. So nothing else that you can say makes you black. There's nothing else you can say that makes you black. So I think that's funny too. And yeah, I just wanted to share that with y'all.
No, that's real talk. Because we asked many people the same question, and we got the same results as you do. There is no answer for it. When they expose that to a thinking mind or make a mind think about that, there's really no real answer. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody's skin is brown and that's the sole reason they call themselves black, any logical thinking person, once really presented with that perspective. Like, they continuously say that, you know, it's about nationalities. I mean, they some hard-headed, stiff-necked people out here. Don't get me wrong, but it's still no answer to that question, because the reality is that it's not. And it's not like we hate our people because we're not a certain color. Like, if our people was out here calling themselves blue people, you know what I mean? And their skin was brown, we would have the same question, you know? But the fact that it's just happy to be black or whatever, you know, the same question is valid. Mm-hmm. If you're not this particular complexion, why are you calling yourself based off of that complexion, that thing? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, logic.
You know, it's funny because I had a Moor, he said, the Moor knew his nationality, but he was still saying he was black. And I was like, you know, what makes you black? And he was like, DNA. And I'm like, okay, DNA is not black. And how does that work? So finally I asked him, like, what's your nationality? Okay, cool. So, you know, you're Nigerian American, and if you replace Nigerian with black, then you just strip yourself from all of your heritage, your culture, your history, all of that. And he was like, man, what the brother say? He tried to, this is what he tried to say. He tried to say that language is arbitrary, and therefore, basically, you could put together any sounds you want and make it you want. And I'm like, come on, Moore, stop it. That's like saying carbon is white, orange soda is purple. You know, a woman is a man. Like, you can't just say, you know, language is arbitrary, so any word can mean anything what you want it to mean. Wow. If that was the case, we wouldn't have dictionaries. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't have etymology. We wouldn't have none of that. So, you know, it's just a fantasy world that they want to continue to live in. And I don't know. I really can't fathom why they would want to continue. But once you understand the legal ramifications and how it pertains to your status at law, then there's no reason to continue to identify, you know, with the brands, which is according to my studies, it's a slaveholder label that was placed upon Moor. But yeah, Islam, man. Peace and love to you, brothers, and thank you for keeping up. Thank you for continuing to put out the information, because Noah Ali did say that the press is our greatest weapon, so we got to continue the information out, because it's a war on our minds right now. So Islam to y'all.
Islam. Peace and love, more.
Well, peace and love, boy. Thank you so much. Islam. More presenting questions. Indeed. So with that being said, we have another caller. We appreciate you all. Caller 804-921. You live on the air. Peace, man. Islam, my brothers. This brother is that calling from you put me down with Shakahana territory. Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. 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 So you know, I was laughing when you said about the taxes. Honestly, until the other brother came on, I didn't research it.
being here in the so-called Richmond locality, Virginia, that wasn't, paying what they call that personal property tax. So you basically paying personal property tax for your vehicle, but it's not yours. Too, because they have their tag on it, which has their name on it. So it clearly says Virginia in capital letters. So you never own anything. You're constantly paying somebody else, and it's interesting how you broke it down and said it in the way you did. It was just kind of funny. I was just laughing.
Yeah. Nah, but I know that. You know that. This is man weird, bro. Man weird. But again, it's still that old mentality. So old mentality that's a real thing still existing. And people don't realize that that's where the color of law comes from. Because like Noble Drew Ali said, those mentalities existed in that time. But when he was talking about the Constitution declared all men equal and free, and it never changed. So the Constitution 1774, and then you got the 14th Amendment. By the time he was looking back at it in the 1900s and whatnot, like, so it was no need for the application of the 15th Amendment. So you had Confederate mentalities that still exist today. And I mean, I can't say the Union is exempt from that mentality, but it's a real thing. That's what the Nixon line was used for, because I seen somebody asking in the chat, what was that? What's the Mason-Dixon line about? But the reality is that's what they use to separate the Union from Confederate. So they all in on it, but the things that just sound too weird. Like, you can't tell that sound right. Like, it just don't sound right. Like, well, if you own a car, you gotta pay taxes on the car annually or every 6 months. Like, that just sounds crazy. Like, it sounds like slavery. That's what it sounds like. And I'm sure people could say the same thing about registrating or registration, but that just sounds like slavery, like pay tax.
Yeah, and the other crazy part is that I was talking with mother earlier, and we talked for a while, and some things that she know and some things she don't know, and I was going over Brother Cujo's book, the Moors and who sold the right, who sold the Feds, Moors or Screeners, and I had sent her a couple of inserts from the book, and I was just sharing with her, and I truly like sharing. And I shared her page 1. I'm not page 1, page 4, symbology. And the crazy part about it is that we went over the portion where it talked about how the Masons, basically got started, and she read over the part where it talks about slaves and how they the Freemasons wanted to break themselves away from the slaves, and so they created a fraternity. They called them the fraternity, basically a free fraternity. So instead of them calling themselves slaves, they were the fraternity. And she wanted to know, because I shared with her that slaves come from the word Slav, and she was like, well, she just kept asking questions, and that was good that she was asking questions, because I could hear her opening herself up to information. Like most people, you can't have that conversation with, but because I've been her information, little by little, she's more open to information.
Straight. Islam.
I was just sharing that. Yeah, I was just sharing that. Just because I was excited about it, just having that conversation with her, and I was sharing with her the secret of the 12, if we could, or the secret of the 9, and she was explaining something about somebody wanted her to become an Eastern Star, and I was kind of messing with her because I said, well, from my understanding of Masonry, I'm not saying it is right, but understanding that if someone asks you to do a secret and they tell you go into this door and you go into the door, there's a door that's closed and you're standing in between two doors and they tell you stand there for 9 hours, and then after 9 hours they tell you come out. And they never tell you what the secret is. So the whole time you going 10, 20 years and you never know what's on the other side of the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I said, it was funny to me because like I said, I don't know if this is right, but I told her that what happens that after that 10th year, they open that door and there's another door inside of that door. There's just so much that this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely crazy.
I was just sharing that, like I said, Mills, you just funny what you said, man.
Islam.
Oh, son, we appreciate you sharing that. That's what's really up.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, but it's crazy. So like down there, I mean, I don't know. Every place has its vibration and rhythm
and things like that. But there in the South, it seems like this is just a little different, you know. Not just because it's rural, but it's just like it feels like it's still a Confederate, and I don't know if that's the right word to pinpoint this on, but it feels like it's more so of a superiority feel now. Like it's mad weird. Man,
Yeah, I guess it would seem like it would seem how you know, look at things. Like if you focus on it, I guess then you would see that. But if and like now since I've learned that we're Moors and this and that, certain things like that probably used to get to me, 10, 20 years ago, I look at that and I laugh because I realized that they're walking around in their own ignorance. And matter of fact, we talked about kind of like what you're talking about, Father. We talked about Jim Crow, and I was explaining to the mother about black and white, and I said that if people look at that aspect like white, they had the water fountain, and they said white people in from here and other people in from here, and I broke down, from the law definition, the Black Law Dictionary, the definition of and color of both. And I told her that it's something that resembles something that's real, but it's actually fake. And I read it to her in the entirety. So then I asked her, I said, is white a color? And she was like, yeah, it's a color. So I said, shouldn't the so-called white people been drinking from the colored water fountain?
Mm-hmm.
But because people don't think like that, they, and I was just explaining to her that black, in that sense, people didn't call themselves black. During that time, they were Negroes, niggers, and all other types of things, but it was anything but being called black. And as I explained to her, black has the origin. If you go to any regular dictionary, it has the origin of bleached and pale. And she started asking about the Black Lives Matter. I'm just giving that background, like he said, that down this way. And it's probably, maybe if you go down a little bit more south, I'm pretty sure there's other things going on. But here is, I guess, it's all about what you know. So as I was explaining to her about Black Lives Matter movement, they came throughout the city. I was saying that basically it's pale lives now. Because look at the people that were involved. And she was like, oh, okay, I get where you're going with that. and understanding the dynamics of the South, if you want to put it in that, or under the Mason-Dixon line, that back in the day, certain things would be a certain type of way. But it's gradually, them same type of people have kind of moved out of the so-called city, because there's a place that they say that we go to here in the city, and they say that you go throughout that place, that they'll run, chase you out and this and that, but gradually those people have moved away, and if they are here, there's a small number. So that now more they call hippie or whatever, the same type of vibe as back in like maybe the 80s or the 70s. So that's the whole thing. I guess it's all in, what section that you go into, that gets coming from a electrician background, that is what is called the girl boy network. And that's, like I said, a lot of that is surely going away because of this so-called identification. A lot of people are moving from up north and different type of places and coming here, and it's more of a different vibe. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolute sense.
I can understand that. Yes. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, because it's a new day and age, so I can give it that. I mean, I know the energy. I'm just saying, like, I guess I'm saying from a perspective of, like, just how it is, what the expectations, quote unquote, are if you're a subject down there, and I mean that because it's like, man, like, I don't know, that just will forever sound weird to me. Like pay taxes on your car, like, that's just crazy. Like, just who will set that expectation? Like, to say it like that, like, I see, and again, like the brother Royal Donnell pointed out, registration, okay, it's kind of like the same thing, but it just sounds mad weird, like saying pay taxes on your car. And that's what they expect in the places in the South. Like, that's just crazy. It sounds crazy. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It just sound like somebody who would set an expectation like that. That's a whole different type of mentality. That's how it sounds to me. And I don't know.
And what you expanding upon is a couple of older people, like you said, a lot of people who have bought in that I'm an American black person, you know, I'm black and I'm proud, and you know, saying that they are a patriot and different things like that. And you know, you can't be a patriot, you know, but they're leading the charge, you know, of that understanding. And so it's like, okay, until we wake up and understand that's not us, we could never be that. You know, it's just crazy. It's crazy. That's that mentality. So a lot of people are on board with what you said, or make sure you pay your personal property tax. Make sure you do this. Make sure you do, and it's word of mouth passed down from generation to generation until we wake up and realize, hold up, why am I paying personal property? Actually, it's every year. So why am I paying every year for personal property tax? And if you don't pay your personal property tax, they basically tell you you can't get your tags, or you can't get your what it used to be. They got rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
You used to have a second sticker. You had an inspection sticker, and then you had your state sticker. That you had to get, but they done away with that. So it's not as harsh if you don't pay your personal property tax that year. They'll come after you when it's time for you to reinstate something.
Yeah.
That's crazy, bro. It sounds like an extension of slavery mentality. Like the idea of it just never sounds right, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just don't sound like it just don't.
Well, that's not the only tax. That's not the only tax. It's like you said, if you run it down that list of taxes, I mean, people paying, you know, taxes on their dogs, the animals. I mean, if you want to get technical, there's a lot of different taxes that people are paying, you know, excess on, you know, here. And actually, when you said that, it just hit me out like, so you mean tell me anywhere else other than here, because I know research it, other than here, they don't pay personal property tax on their vehicle? What?
That's why Drew Ali said they're gonna tax us to.
That's crazy. So yeah, there's so many other taxes that outside of just the vehicle tax, you know, that people are paying, you know, and they're not even, you know, being aware of it because we have bought into that system of this is what you're supposed to do. Until someone tells you otherwise, you like, either you're gonna listen to that person or you're gonna fight them down and be like, well, I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do because I'm a patriot, or this is the patriotic thing to do. You know, I'm supposed to do this, and they just bought into that. I'm a citizen. I'm a real citizen. What can you do? You know?
Sure.
So yeah, that's why it was just funny. It was just funny when you said it. That's all.
Yeah, nah, I appreciate it though, bro. Like, you know, it's real. You know, it's definitely real. Like it just sounds I don't know, man. I don't know, but I think we do know that mentality. So, like, when people talk about old laws and old mentalities and laws, I feel like that's one that has to go. Because, like, I don't know. I guess maybe up here they get people more with tolls. Like, I don't know if it's as many tolls down there as it is up here, but that's still like a travel tax. Yeah, like up here, that's still kind of like a travel tax.
Yeah.
Like you definitely get on certain highways, they're gonna hit you up for the tax, they'll call it a toll, but it's a tax. You know what I mean? Like you gotta pay to get through, but it still don't sound right. Like pay taxes on the property, the vehicle that you own. And then you can look at it from different ways too. Like I know they try to do the property tax situation, and the whole shit, but that's still all of it being weird in the excess or excise. That's like the weirdest one I ever heard. Like I'm not even going to front. It's the land conveyance. You know, like that's just crazy.
Mm.
That's extra crazy. All of it is how it acts. It's crazy. Yeah, that's how it is, man. I guess we can break so many other things down, you know, that comes with that. And everything would sound crazy, you know, from taxes to like you said, paying tolls. Yeah, all of it sounds crazy. That's a fact, bro. So yeah, man. I don't know, it's a lot to analyze. But then look at this too, right? That's why I say, even with that being what it is, in these days and times, I'm not sure too much, but a lot of the people, at least for a nice part, and it may still be that way in some parts, but they had suspended, quote unquote, all the tolls when the coronavirus broke out because they wasn't trying to transmit the disease like that. But then they send people the tickets in the mail. It's crazy. And in certain places they raise the toll. Then they got the digital toll booths. All of it is just crazy. It's wild. But that being said, we do not have any more people in the chat with their hands up. So I'm gonna give the floor to you, Cujo and Brethren, if you're going to say anything in closing now.
Islam more. You know, just in closing, always a great build with the Moors. Always great to be on the Sons of Allah MHHS platform to make sure that at least some right information is getting out there to assist our people. And you know, honors to everybody who also called in and, you know, said peace. You know, peace and love to all.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know what? Not that I hate anything. I like this. But just as we was closing, we got two more callers. And you know what? I wanna open up the lines so that whatever messages is meant to come through for the remainder, we could do that and hear the people out. So with that being said, Reverend, I forgot. I'm sorry. I don't think you stated your appellation when you first came on, but I definitely appreciate it. You know, when it's that. What is that? Okay, yeah, pardon. You did state your appellation, y'all. Well, yo, I appreciate you calling in and adding on, and I'm thankful for this moment in time that we was able to build once again and hear each other out. But yeah, that said, we got limited time. I'm gonna go to the next caller, the brother Zach.
It's a lot more.
All right, that being said, indeed. That being said, we have caller 718-747. Peace, man. You live on the air. Hey, peace as well. I wanted to say, I grew up a little patriotic because my uncle died in Vietnam, so those images were in the household. But my family was Puerto Rican growing up, and I was the only one who was mixed. So my dad wasn't around. But in high school, I was into Dead Prez, so it kind of blitzed that those images I had as a child. I was willing to throw them out my head, and for me, I could look back and that was a psychological two-sided jam where it's like, all right, we're gonna let y'all go up there and burn a flag, but there's gonna be another flag burning in the minds of, behind the scenes. So what it did for me was, it took me until just now, from when Dead Prez was out on stage, I was sitting out in 2003 and rebelling in art class, not standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance, and arguing about nothing. And I didn't have a graphic design portfolio for college, and I couldn't succeed in college. In college, I ended up doing stupid stuff like robbing only certain people, while they were sleeping, taking DVDs and video games, dumb stuff, threw my education away. I was only doing it to so-called white people, And I'm half white. I hated myself. So it took me a long time to begin to balance with who I am, and it's very hurtful. But the point I want to make is that when I came into the angle of understanding where I can hear what you're saying, I believe all the way through, where like in the back of your mind, there's much that I'm sure I haven't gotten to, but I have the foundation to be like, I ain't get there,
but I know I'm understand it. But I pretty much just like take it in as it comes and follow. But to get to that, it took me to actually go through like the labyrinth of modern day. You know, if it was when the Kodesh Hammurabi were prevalent, and we had to look to those. You know, when you really had to feel the fire under your ass when it's coming for you. You know what I'm saying? And like I felt like that for some stuff in recent times, and I really had to learn some things to save my life from where it would have went. So the point I want to make is that if it was for that fire, as they say, I guess in certain institutions, you know, I think I learned they mean causing a hot thing. I ain't never do no ritual, but I crossed the real hot sands, you know what I'm saying? So I like, you know, I crossed the hot sands where I was like, yo, I know they killed Noble Drew Ali. I was so scared and I couldn't save myself. And I felt like it was just a knock on the door to grab this paper trying to process me, but that shit, there's so much behind it. There was so much behind it that it scared the F out of me. But I felt in that instant of a lot of things going on and my paranoia, which was founded on realness, you know, I understood a lot of stuff through going through the labyrinth. So, you know, the point is that it took me so long to get to looking at the Constitution because of, damn, I hate to say it, but you know, you know what I'm saying? That shit fucked me up. So I didn't want to listen to the Constitution, but a documentary called The Matrix Unplugged, it got me to looking at it from a geographical, historical standpoint of like, it was a chess move. It was like, oh, word, you mean for slavery? Hold up. This happened. Hold up. So, real quick, I just gotta say, just off the fact that you mentioned that DVD, The Matrix Unplugged, for that. You that's the one that knew for that. Yeah. Like that's all I had to say. I'm done.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
It was crazy. I just had that conversation.
Yeah, that's the one.
I just had that conversation. But I didn't think about the Constitution till I had a lot of shit where I was like, yo, I got to learn how to sue. They discriminated against me. I'm a slave. I can't even stand on my ground. I'm fucked up. Cause I was trying to fuck with. I ain't gonna lie, y'all remind me of Moor Kush. I was Moor Kush. I ain't gonna talk about nothing. I'm gonna leave it at that because there's a lot that comes with just saying that. But you know, I was ready to die about it, and I took a different plunge. You know what I'm saying? But I know a lot of what's going on, so from a different way. But now I could kind of, you know, I could hear y'all clear, but I'm in a jam. I'm like, whew, I can't. So what I'm doing now is I got the will and the energy to see clear, and like I just dropped a 71-page rebuttal for my discrimination. I mean, I had to go to the Division of Human Rights. I don't, I know that statement is a lot that could be responded to, but I'm fighting for my life. And before I got back to listening to y'all and all of that, like, it's like my cup was empty because shit, I ain't even want to live. Like, I was going through so much. I literally was on the floor. I ain't no cup. All my cups was literally broken. Like, my shit was. I had to get an order of petition. I had to petition for protection because I was getting beat up from a chick. You know what I'm saying? And alas, it was changed to something else that the definition of what Blake means. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to get too much info because they do be listening, but that's it. That's our history. So I also wanted to contribute that I just recently felt like how when I be listening to y'all kick it, I went to a little research. This is my last statement. I just looked up some docket history of upstate New York, the Keepers of the Fire as they call. I forgot what the tribes are called, but I ended up seeing at the convention center in the 1900s, early 1900s, I think 1910. I can't remember what year specifically, but it was named Alhambra. So I when I took that in, I was like, damn. And then I got that picture of King George in my head, and that there is another chess move, was the crown chess move for me. And I just got that played in my head. So that's what I wanted to say. And I wrote these notes down because usually I be shaking trying to talk to, when I get on the line. So I wrote that shit down while I was talking to other callers. That's my piece. Islam. I love y'all.
Islam, Moor. Give thanks.
For Islam. Indeed. Thank you for calling in, man. We appreciate that. Likewise, bro. All right, so that being said, we still have two more callers. We thank all of you, everybody, listening, calling in. But we got caller 267-275. He's been here. Elon Morris is here.
Peace, Moor.
So basically, like, with everything tonight, like, heavily on this, and going back about a week ago, we had a debate with Nat Alai. We like what I was saying and what I'm saying as far as something that's like it hasn't been really like pushed as far as like more is that we should start attacking the 14th Amendment and its illegality, and not so much that we're not black, citizens. Legal to call us a citizen because the document is illegal itself. And as far as us going to their venues and being heard, first of all, like, we have to be sure that that's the actual court, and then to be heard, like, when you're putting forth like case laws or congressional records, it's best to have those documents under seal from either a notary public that's recognized as a sealer or the Library of Congress. Now, Library of Congress that's more, what we go to. So basically, pursuant to the rules, the federal rules of evidence 902, those are self-authenticating documents when you have a seal from the Library of Congress and then a document, stating whatever. Even if you have the Constitution, you want to present that, it's best to have it under seal. Your treaty, everything that you want to put forth, have it under seal. So it's them saying that, what you're purporting, not you standing on it, because it's like, they'll try to hit you with the hearsay opinion or frivolous claim. But if you, go their documents where they have still what they're saying, it's them saying the document, or them saying the statement that you're standing on. So it's like you're using their word against them. And they won't tell you that that's not usable or whatever because it's the seal. And that, they will be violating their oath to their bond. So I wanted to jump into a document that I'm not sure if Moor heard about, but this is a document I just got this sealed. It's called Broken Promises by Stephen T. King, Iowa. He's a congressman of Iowa. And this just happened in June 23rd, 2010, where he went in. He went crazy. And y'all more got to hear this. Y'all got to hear what he says about, being a citizen. What is it doing to you? So and then look at who he is talking about. But this House, led by Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So before I go all the way in, he's talking about what Nancy Pelosi and her party under Obama did, and it involves the United States citizenship and all that. Now watch. Nancy Pelosi has counseled to the president's priorities and spent trillions unnecessarily. Not millions, not billions, trillions. And this is in 2010. And, people think that this stuff is real. Trillions unnecessarily. The number that I added up in my head, standing on the floor here a week or two ago, 2.34 trillion of unnecessary spending. Yeah, that's right, 2.34 trillion. And the president's budget, as he presented it, is the only budget we've got with. No conscience to try to balance it, no conscience to try to limit it. Today, a baby. Now listen, Morris, this is where it gets crazy. Today, a baby born in America, their share of the national debt, you just say, here's an IOU that the little baby, when their foot goes down on the birth certificate and prints it, is an acknowledgement that their share of the national debt is that they owe Uncle Sam $44,000 or 44. And we worry about a little child. All the money that it takes to provide health care and education and clothing and housing and nurture and love to bring that child up to responsible adulthood. The little old child that grows up into a responsible adult, we about them carrying a student loan debt that might be, let's say, pick a number in the ballpark. It's not a statistical number. It's a ballpark number. Maybe 40,000 worth of student loans when they finish college. That burden of service, the interest and principal on 40,000 student loans. We worry about that. Well, I would be happy to take that 40,000 loan and a guarantee of a college degree and think that child could pay it off. But for nothing, they don't get a college degree. They don't get an education. They just get access to citizenship of the United States of America for their 44,000. That's their share of the national debt. A little baby with ink on their foot stamped right on the birth certificate that is one of this country hasn't seen. But the footprint on the ones that we have seen, those little babies, so Uncle Sam, $44,000.